Hello, friends, classmates, professors. I've chosen to share a story, a wisdom story, with you today to illustrate much of what I've learned through the readings in class and our discussions and our dialogue groups, and some of that which I've synthesized through my experience also at my community site. First, I will share the story, and then I want to talk a little bit about the story and break it down some and relate it to some of the things that we've been talking about and discussing in class, and also, in regards to what I've learned and how I see that potentially informing, or definitely informing, my future ministry as a Unitarian Universalist minister. One of the things that I've really learned over my time working with people of all ages in the field of education, faith development education, is that stories are so important. Stories are one of the ways that we humans have communicated important concepts, lessons, moral tales, if you will, for as long as we can. As long as we're able to track back in history, we see that stories have been an important way of communicating the vital lessons in life from one generation to the next. My story share today is called The Difference Between Heaven and Hell. And this is an adaptation of a parable that occurs in many different cultures. And this particular adaptation comes from the story as it was told in Eastern culture. So, the difference between heaven and hell. Long ago, there was a woman who had a wish. She wished more than anything to see for herself the difference between heaven and hell. You see, she was getting older and wiser and thinking about her own mortality, and had heard about heaven and hell, but really wanted to know, what's the difference? The monks at the temple agreed to grant her request. They put a blindfold around her eyes and said, "First you shall see hell." When the blindfold was removed, the old woman was standing at the entrance to a great dining hall. The hall was full of round tables, each piled high with the most delicious foods, meats and vegetables and fruits and breads and desserts of all kinds. The smells that reached her nose were wonderful. The old woman noticed that in hell there were people seated around those circular tables filled with an amazing feast. She saw that the people, however, were thin, and so thin she could see their bones through their skin. Their faces were gaunt and creased with frustration. Each person held a spoon. The spoons must have been 3 feet long. They were so long that the people in hell could reach out to the food in the platters on the tables, but they could not get the food back into their mouths. As the old woman watched, she heard their hungry, desperate cries. "I've seen enough," she cried. "Please, let me see heaven." And so again, the blindfold was put around her eyes, and the old woman heard, "Now you shall see heaven." When the blindfold was removed, the old woman was confused, for there she stood again at the entrance of a great dining hall filled with round tables piled high with the same lavish feast. And again, she saw the people were sitting in chairs around the tables, just out of arm's reach of the food with those 3-foot spoons. But as the old woman looked closer, she noticed that the people in heaven were plump. They had rosy, happy faces. As she watched, a joyous sound of laughter filled the air, and soon the old woman was laughing too, for now she understood the difference between heaven and hell for herself. The people in heaven were using those long spoons to feed one another. That, my friends, is the end of the story, but it is not the end of our learning journey and our exploration of the many meanings of the story. I've told this story many times to many different Unitarian Universalist groups of children and adults. And it's really interesting that now, as I reread the story and thought about it, it has a whole new layer of meaning to me and to my work and to my thought process because of the experiences I've had in community studies and because of the things we've explored through the readings and discussions. So, for one thing, I think it's really important to note that each person at the table, each person sitting in a chair around a table, is seeing a different side of the table, or they're seeing a different area of the table. Since it's round, it doesn't have sides, but you know what I mean. Like, they're seeing a different part of the feast. Each person can only see their portion of the feast. So I like to imagine that there's someone in heaven, in the heaven scenario, who's sitting in their chair just really craving some key lime pie. And from their vantage point, they don't see any key lime pie. Bummer, no key lime pie, just what I wanted for dessert today. However, the person opposite them on the other side of the table is actually sitting in the area right where the key lime pie is. And that person, after hearing their friend across the table looking for key lime pie, is able to scoop up some key lime pie in their 3-foot long handled spoon and feed it to their friend. So I like the way we can think about this story as giving an opportunity to recognize that everyone sees things differently and sees different parts of something, kind of like the blind men and the elephant story. So then we also have an example in this story of the people in heaven having subverted a system, right? So you've got the people in hell who are all stuck in their chairs. We don't know why they're stuck in their chairs. They're stuck in their chairs. It's a story. We don't have to question that part. But they're stuck in these chairs, and that's the system, right? The system has stuck them there. We are stuck in systems also. So these folks in heaven have figured out a way to subvert the system. They have figured out a way to work together as a community of loving individuals who are going to work to become a larger community, a group that will work as one to help one another. So the individual needs are being met and the community is working together, and it's making everyone better and happier all together and healthier together. So the fact that the heaven version shows that people have subverted a system and figured out a way to survive within it, for me now, thinking about this with new perspectives and looking at the story with a new lens, is that I want to think about how the system can be changed rather than just subverted, right? So but we talked a lot and thought a lot about ways of not only tearing down or dismantling systems of inequity, but what do we do to create new systems? How do we create new systems? And what does that kind of transformation look like? So I feel like from a big learning for me from my class this year is that I have a lot of the raw material to work with in terms of classes that I've taken, experiences that I've had, books that I've read, um, you know, uh, conferences, and, just really doing a lot of internal thinking and writing and work around systems of inequity and my role in them. Now I feel like I'm starting to put a lot of those raw materials together and see things differently and have new perspectives. And and I feel very inspired to explore how we not only tear down and dismantle oppressive systems, but how we build and create new life sustaining and equitable systems. So I feel like that's where I really see myself moving in my ministry moving forward. And I'm excited to embark on that journey and feel like this first year in seminary has given me even more tools, but also the feeling of putting those tools together and synthesizing something into a new kind of vision and way of being in the world. So thank you so much.